Welcome back to English Podcast Go. I'm Cyrus, and each episode brings you closer to confident English. Let's jump into today's episode.
Okay, let's unpack this. Seriously, take a second and imagine future you, the person you'll be in, say, 20 years. Got him.
Okay.
Now, think about the biggest decision you're facing right now. Maybe a career move, a major purchase, or even a relationship choice. You're making this decision because you believe it's the right one for your future happiness.
Right. We put so much thought into making our future selves happy based on who we are today. It makes sense on the surface.
Exactly. But what if 2 decades from now, that future person you just pictured looks back at the choice you're making right now and thinks, what were you possibly thinking? That's the last thing I would want.
It's kind of a jarring thought, isn't it? That the person making the decisions today might fundamentally misunderstand the person who has to live with them tomorrow. Yeah.
It really is. And this deep dive is all about why that happens. It's this fascinating, slightly unsettling phenomenon that's called the illusion of continuity. It's this weird paradox where we can look back at who we were 5, 10, 20 years ago and clearly see just how much we've changed. Our tastes, our opinions, our priorities, maybe even our core identity. We see it so clearly.
Yeah, looking back, the changes often seem obvious, stark even.
But then we look forward, and we struggle to imagine that same level of profound change happening to us. We tend to picture a slightly older version of ourselves, but essentially the same person inside.
And our source for this deep dive is a truly thought-provoking talk that uses some powerful stories, a surprising real-life example, and even a touch of philosophy to really, dig into this idea.
Yeah, it really goes beyond just abstract concepts and shows us how much this illusion impacts our actual lives.
Definitely.
So our mission today is to really unpack this illusion of continuity. We want to understand why we fall into this trap, look at some of the pretty profound consequences it has sometimes in life and death situations, which is quite intense.
It can be, yes.
And most importantly, explore some practical ways to navigate this strange relationship we have with the person we are becoming.
So where does this paradox really hit home? It's that difference between how we perceive change looking backward versus looking forward. Why is it so easy to see transformation in the rearview mirror, but so difficult when we're looking through the windshield?
Our source uses some great personal examples to highlight this. Imagine being a 12-year-old kid, utterly obsessed with soccer, maybe even with a fractured foot at the time, just desperate to see a soccer movie.
Right, total single-minded focus.
Exactly. And that kid genuinely saw their hypothetical 52-year-old future self, someone who had shifted their sports passion to a different kind of football, American football, as practically a betrayal. They just couldn't conceive of that shift in identity and interest happening.
It felt like losing a part of themselves, even hypothetically. And then look at another moment from the source. A 22-year-old electronics engineer living in South India. This was a time before the internet as we know it, certainly before podcasts.
Right, a completely different world.
That person had absolutely zero frame of reference. No way to predict that decades later, they would be living across the world in the United States, working as a journalist and hosting a show called Hidden Brain. The future wasn't just unknown. That specific future was truly unimaginable from that 22-year-old's perspective.
And we don't have to go back decades. Just look at the last few years, the COVID pandemic. Think about how much people changed during that relatively short period.
Oh, absolutely.
We saw shifts in anxiety levels, how people coped with isolation, how massive disruptions to their lives and livelihoods altered their fundamental outlooks and perspectives. We can look back at the past 3 years and clearly identify that profound change happened.
But despite seeing that happen, even recently, the paradox persists when we look forward. When we examine our past selves, the contrast is clear. We see someone who is different from who we are now.
Yeah, the evidence is right there.
But when we project into the future, that change feels fuzzy. Amorphous, as the source puts it. We tend to just picture a slightly older version of ourselves, maybe with a few more wrinkles, but holding the same fundamental perspectives and preferences. We don't anticipate being a truly different person with fundamentally different views.
And this illusion, this belief that our future self is just more of the same, isn't just about changing hobbies or careers. The source makes a powerful case that it has profound consequences, sometimes in the most serious of matters, those involving life and death.
Which brings us to the story of John and Stephanie Rinka, a deeply moving example shared in the talk.
Yeah, this one really stuck with me.
They met and married young in 1971. He was 22, she 19. They eloped in Cambridge, Massachusetts, eventually settling down in rural North Carolina. John became a high school basketball coach, and Stephanie worked as a nurse doing home visits.
And as a nurse in a rural area, Stephanie often cared for patients who were terminally ill, many with a very low quality of life. This experience deeply affected her.
Understandably.
She would come home and tell John, not just once or twice, but frequently over the next 30 years, "John, if I ever get a terminal illness like that, please promise me you won't do anything to prolong my suffering. Quality of life is everything. Just let me go."
She'd even say, in more intense moments, something like, "If I ever get that sick, just shoot me." And John, looking at his young, happy wife, would respond, perhaps a bit casually, perhaps just out of love and reassurance, "Okay, Steph, okay." He agreed. He heard her.
But then, decades later, in her late 50s, Stephanie is diagnosed with ALS Lou Gehrig's disease. It's fatal and incurable, and the doctors tell her she will eventually lose the ability to breathe on her own.
Just devastating news.
Stephanie, a brave person, spent time with her loved ones, even took a final trip to a beautiful beach she loved. But the day came. She began gasping for air. John rushed her to the hospital.
And the nurse, doing her job, asked the critical question, "Mrs. Rinka, would you like us to put you on a ventilator?"
And Stephanie's answer was yes.
John was stunned, completely flabbergasted. 30 years of promises, conversations, heartfelt pleas, and in the moment, she said yes.
It must have been incredibly difficult for him. He didn't challenge her then, but the next morning he asked again gently, "Steph, yesterday, when the nurse asked, you said yes to the ventilator. Is that really what you want?"
And again, she said yes.
Now, you might say, well, an advance directive, a living will, that would have solved the legal problem.
Right.
If she were unconscious, John would have told the doctors no, based on her stated wishes.
Right, the legal mechanism exists.
But the source argues that the deeper, more complex ethical problem remains. Healthy 39-year-old Stephanie, making those passionate statements about how she would want to die, couldn't possibly have truly conceived what sick 59-year-old Stephanie, gasping for air and facing death in that moment, would actually desire.
For the older Stephanie, her younger self, the one who made those firm decisions, was in a profound sense like a stranger trying to make the most critical decision of her life without truly knowing the reality of being in her shoes then.
You do?
Yeah.
Wow. That really puts a human face on this abstract idea of changing over time. It forces you to confront the fact that you might genuinely have different priorities, especially when facing something so fundamental.
Exactly.
And that idea of someone changing so much, they're almost a different person.
It reminds me of a classic philosophical puzzle the source brings up. The Ship of Theseus.
Ah, yes, the Ship of Theseus. It's a great analogy for this.
Yep.
The story goes that the legendary Greek warrior Theseus' ship was kept in a harbor as a memorial. Over centuries, as the wooden planks decayed, they were replaced one by one with new ones.
Okay.
Eventually, every single piece of the original ship was replaced. Not one original plank remained.
And the question philosophers have debated for millennia, going all the way back to Plato, is it still the Ship of Theseus? If every part is different, is the whole still the same?
And the source argues that we are talking examples of this paradox. On a biological level, our cells are constantly being replaced. The person you were just a decade ago is biologically different today, cell by cell. Right, physically, we're not the same collection of atoms.
But it's even deeper than just biology. Like a ship isn't just planks. A body isn't just cells. The organization matters. But at a psychological level, because of the brain's incredible plasticity, its ability to change and rewire every new experience, every new piece of knowledge, every new perspective changes the underlying structure.
So it's not just swapping parts, the actual design changes too.
Exactly. Each new psychological plank isn't an identical copy of the old one. You are fundamentally becoming a new person psychologically, layer by layer.
So it raises that profound question, doesn't it? Is the 12-year-old soccer fanatic, the 52-year-old podcast host, and a hypothetical 82-year-old living by the sea truly the same person?
Or are they, in a very real sense, different individuals with evolving identities, perspectives, and desires? It's a tricky question with no easy answer.
And this isn't just an interesting philosophical debate. The source points out that this illusion, the belief that we represent the end of history, that our current self and current views are stable and final, causes real, practical problems in our lives and in society.
Absolutely. Think about the promises we make to others. When you promise someone, "till death do us part," you are making a commitment on behalf of a future self, a stranger, in a sense.
A stranger you haven't met yet.
Who might not share your current feelings, hopes, or even core values decades down the line. Yet, that future self is expected to keep that promise made by, well, by past you.
That puts a different spin on long-term commitments.
Right.
Or consider the justice system. When someone is sentenced to decades in prison,
Right.
not only does the person in prison change profoundly over 30 or 40 years, but we change too. Our collective need for retribution or vengeance, our societal views on crime and punishment might look incredibly different decades later.
So, does the punishment fit the person they became or the person they were? It's a complex question society grapples with.
And laws themselves. Legislation written decades ago based on the best knowledge and societal perspectives of the time can later seem antiquated or absurd or even unconscionable
Yeah, history is full of examples.
because society's understanding and values have changed so dramatically. Laws represent the collective end of history illusion of our particular moment in time.
So, yeah, this illusion impacts everything from our personal relationships to the very fabric of our society. And it's complicated, right?
Definitely complicated.
The source calls it a wicked problem because we spend so much effort trying to make plans and decisions that will make our future selves happy without truly considering that that future self might look back at us with utter bewilderment or even resentment, wondering why we decided that was what they would want.
It leaves us in a bind. How do we plan for a future self we don't truly know? It feels almost impossible.
Well, maybe not impossible, but it requires a different approach. The source offers 3 pieces of advice, not to solve the problem entirely, because maybe it can't be solved, but to help us wrestle with it more effectively and build a better relationship with the person we are becoming.
Okay, hit me with them. What are the 3 ways to deal with this fundamental uncertainty?
The first piece of advice is to stay curious. If you accept that you are definitely going to be a different person in the future, the evidence is overwhelming, then you can take a more active role in influencing who that person becomes.
So not just passively changing, but actively shaping.
Exactly. Think of yourself as the curator or the architect of your future self, rather than just a passenger along for the ride.
Okay, how do you actually do that? How do you curate your future self? Seems a bit abstract.
It's about deliberately expanding your horizons today. Spend time with people who are different from you, people outside your usual circle. Pursue diverse hobbies or professional interests outside your comfort zone. Read widely. Travel, if you can.
So gather diverse experiences now.
Right. These experiences lay the groundwork for the person you are becoming, shaping your perspectives and capacities in ways you might not even anticipate now.
Got it. Don't just let change happen. Guide it by being open to new things, new inputs.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the second piece of advice?
The second is to practice humility. This is especially relevant when we express strong, certain views, whether it's on social media, about politics, or just strongly held opinions in everyday life.
Oh boy.
The source points out something quite profound. Among the people who might disagree vehemently with your current, certain view is your own future self.
Oof. That's a humbling thought.
Yeah.
Future me might read something Present Me posted and just cringe or completely disagree.
Exactly. So adding a touch of humility to our pronouncements is wise. It acknowledges that your current perspective, no matter how confident you are in it, is likely not the final word because you and the world around you are constantly changing.
So hold opinions strongly, but maybe state them slightly less? Absolutely.
Something like that. And this applies to leaders and organizations too. The idea that your current plan or vision is the irreversible final word is often based on the same illusion of continuity. Things change.
Okay. Stay curious, practice humility. And the third piece of advice.
The third piece of advice is to be brave. We often hesitate to pursue new opportunities because we feel we lack the capacity today.
Right. That fear of failure or just feeling overwhelmed.
We tell ourselves things like, I don't have it in me to quit my stable job and start that risky venture, or I'm too old to learn a new language, or I couldn't possibly handle the challenges of caring for someone with complex needs.
We judge our future capacity based solely on our current self, our current limitations.
Precisely. And the source encourages us to reframe that. Don't say you lack the capacity overall, say you lack the capacity today. Recognize that your future self, while they might face new frailties, will also develop new strengths, new capacities, new wisdom that you simply don't possess right now.
So it's acknowledging that growth happens, resilience builds.
Yes. The person who can handle that challenge or learn that skill or start that company might not be you today, but they might very well be future you, shaped by the experiences between now and then.
So accepting future change isn't just about acknowledging limitations. It's also about trusting in future potential. Stay curious, practice humility, be brave. Those are the three.
By actively engaging with these ideas, consciously trying to shape the person you're becoming, holding your present views with a touch of humility, and recognizing the potential for future strength, the source suggests a powerful outcome.
What's that?
That your future self, 20 or 30 years from now, won't look back at you with bewilderment or resentment. Instead, they'll look back at the person you are today and feel a genuine, heartfelt thank you.
Thank you for laying the groundwork, for being curious, humble, and brave enough to let me become who I am. That's quite a goal.
It is. It reframes how we think about our own life journey.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's given me a lot to think about.
Me too. And here's something to really chew on for everyone listening. How does understanding this illusion of continuity and your own potential for future change alter the big decisions you're making today? If you know you'll be different, maybe significantly different, how does that change the way you approach planning your career, your relationships, your finances, or even just your hobbies?
It's a big question.
And maybe more concretely, what's one small step you could take this week to build curiosity, practice a little humility, or cultivate bravery for the person you are in the process of becoming?